Introducing the epic new Swift. Time to go swifting.
वॉचो ऐप पे देखो एक ओटीटी के दाम पे सारे ओटीटी शान से।
We're down to our final four. It is semi-finals time in the ICC Men's T20 World Cup. It's time to look ahead to what could very well decide who ends up in Barbados on the 29th. This is Maruti Suzuki Arena presents ESPN Cricinfo Timeout, powered by DishTV Watcho. It's my phase-wise rendezvous with Stephen Fleming, and I expect it to be just as informative as it was prior to the Super 8s. Let's talk about who's made it eventually, Flem. You called it for India and England. You were torn between South Africa and the West Indies. We could see why. Close game. That saw Aiden Markram's side make it. Afghanistan making it, though, to their first ever semi-final. Let me start on that note, Flem. So what could possibly be the difference in that sort of contest?
Well, you probably look at managing the situation. Looking at Afghanistan, you would now hope from their point of view that they haven't played their final or semi-final. And that meant so much. They've got to lift again and ride the wave of exhilaration and performance and put in a no-fear performance. They played with, you could say, a conservative nature. So against South Africa, they're going to have to play probably a little bit more aggressive with the bat and look to be a little bit more adventurous. They've got a method, it looks like. They have identified that their bowling attack is lethal in these conditions. They have a method which has worked, but you just need to make sure you push ahead a little bit. So a 120 score against South Africa might not be enough. Against Bangladesh today it was. You might want to look at 140, 150 just to give yourself a little bit of breathing room. So it's whether they can just push the game plan that they've got just a little bit harder and having one of those top three to be a little bit more adventurous and give that bowling attack a little bit more to bowl to, because the step up in South African batting is quite high. And even though you won't say limp their way through to the semi-finals, they've got through to the semi-finals. They haven't really flexed that much. There's some excellent players there and they've just done enough. So from an Afghanistan point of view, you really want to have some runs on the board and test not the techniques, but probably the mindset of the South African players. And that is probably the greatest challenge for both teams, is managing a positive mindset in what is a pretty crucial game. They're very close. For South Africa, they're very close. And there's so many reasons why they want to go through. Managing that expectation and treating it as another outing is going to be a huge challenge.
South Africa, what sort of mentality is a team in that's played 7, won 7, and in all those 7 or maybe 6, they were good against Sri Lanka. They had a slight scare, but otherwise in every game they found themselves in trouble. In many ways they've just about gotten over the line. So what does that tell you about a team like that?
Well, they're not at their best, and the batting lineup in particular, and the bowling side of things is going great. They've done some fantastic things with both spin and pace, and the captaincy of Markram has also been really good to watch. He's really played the situation or the circumstance as well, and he's used his resource depending on what his gut feel has told him right from the first over. And the last game was a good indication with him bowling 4 on the trot. So very good captaincy, and their fielding and bowling has been quite polished. It's the batting that has been a little bit jittery, and they just haven't had someone in red hot form going through and getting the 50s and 60s. It's usually 75, 80s or 100s, but the batting conditions have been quite testing. So you just haven't seen someone in form. Reza Hendricks is struggling a little bit, and de Kock has been okay. He's probably been the sort of standout player to a degree, but the fluency of that batting order just needs to be a bit better so that they get some comfort out of their wins. So they'll be really uncomfortable with the nature of their wins, and that's just because they've lost a lot of wickets. Now, the wickets are asking for craft, and this semi-final is going to be exactly the same. It's not going to be free scoring if it goes to trend. So the ability to find a way and be comfortable with that style and getting a score 150, 160 could easily be enough.
Yeah, Aiden Markram's captaincy has been a serious talking point, and in a positive way he's been standout with his tactics, introducing Rabada as late as the 18th over in must-win game against the West Indies. They've shuffled between an extra seamer and Otniel Batman, and every time Tabraiz Shamshi is left out and comes back in, he puts in the performance of his life. Now this is against Afghanistan, who would probably prefer more spin than pace. So what sort of team do you sense South Africa should go with?
I'll still go on conditions. I think sometimes you can get too caught up in who you're playing, but look at conditions and back your people. And if it's Shamsi they go with, then back him to be the guy on that surface. Don't pick a side matched up against the opposition that goes against the conditions of the pitch, and that's often the mistake that's made. You can't bowl spin to good players of spin. Well, the pitch is offering spin, and you got your spinners back them. So again, use your experience, and they've done it well. They pick teams, horses for courses, and they've done that pretty well. And the tactics with the teams they've been using have been spot on. So back yourself again, Aidan Markram, in your think tank, and back your players. Don't get too spooked out by playing a team that plays spin well, if that's the case. But also, you're going to have enough pace that if you get the opportunity to get up above the shoulders or around the chest, that could also be an area with that extra pace that they carry with Rabada and Nokia.
You know enough of these South African players. Is it already fair to judge them differently from previous South African sides with that whole thing of knockout games and pressure at ICC events, or will it come down to whether they actually go the distance?
I think so, but the people who have to answer that is probably themselves. In some ways, the team itself, the environment, they do everything to take away that pressure, but it does sit there. And the only way really to cut that and get rid of it is to bury one, is to go all the way. And this group of players has the skill to do it. Sometimes it's skill. The mentality is always going to be tested, but these guys have played a lot of cricket now. They know the expectation of what is required from this group, and they'll be trying everything possible to downplay it. The most relaxed they can be, if they can drop it right down a gear and actually have a no fear attitude towards it, it'll give them a chance. But I think the group that has to answer the biggest question is the group in the changing room.
Afghanistan also have a number of bowlers in good form. Farooqi, Naveen-ul-Haq are all among the leading wicket takers in this year's tournament. When you have 3 or 4 bowlers in good form, how do you sort of plan who you're going to take down or what phases you're going to try and win when you come up against Afghanistan, looking at their bowling, Flem?
Well, when you put it like that is why Afghanistan are in the semi-finals. That is an excellent. Noor Ahmed as well was a handful on his day in the right conditions. And what Afghanistan, and we go right back to our first conversations, that game, that nervy game, New Zealand against Afghanistan, and they absolutely dominated that game. And that was the first signs that we could see something special. And since then, they have really dominated with the ball. So as a batting unit, you've got to be pretty confident about what you're coming up against using your game plan. If Klassen wants to take them on, take them on. Markram also a very good player of spin. One thing that's probably been a little bit short in this tournament is players assessing what a good score is going to be. And that could be coming out of the IPL or other tournaments where it's been a bit higher. But there's a nervousness about playing too slow. And sometimes that can just cause a defensive nature, or the other way. You go from 1 gear up to 4th gear too quickly, rather than just moving through the innings and having a strike rate of 120, 130 rather than 150, 160. So recognising the conditions and trusting that your game plan at the time is suitable to get enough runs to win the game. Now that's the challenge for world-class hitters like Klassen, like Davey Miller. Markram a bit more circumspect, he's got to be the rock, but de Kock as well is understanding that the variations in wickets, you may just have to find or tone down your options until that opportunity comes up. Against Afghanistan, not too many to take a risk at some point.
Yeah, that mindset was almost shown in Afghanistan's game against Bangladesh, where we thought maybe they're overly cautious when they were batting first. They also will be waiting for the fitness on Rahmanullah Gurbaz, and it's a quick turnaround before the semi-final. They rely heavily on him, Flem, and we know batting sometimes is the concern. If you rely on one player, and that player is either dismissed early or he's not available, how do you sort of liberate the rest of the batting lineup to ensure that the batting doesn't let them down when they've got such a good bowling attack?
You just keep talking confidence, keep talking a big game. There are good enough players in there, and look, I think the balance probably was a bit conservative today between attack and defence. They do need him, and I think there'd be a lot of ice put on that knee over the next sort of 24 hours, and you would expect he would take his place. But they also have to show some confidence and aggression. You can't be too defensive. If the opportunity comes up, then you got to take it. And part of the collapses have been based on the rest of the team feeling edgy that they're behind. And that's sometimes a sign that the players that are in are going too slow, because all of a sudden the guys that are coming out are just playing the most outrageous shots. And that can often reflect the discussion that's happening in the changing room, or a general feel that you're behind the scoring rate and behind the game. So look for Afghanistan to be a little bit more positive at the top. They can do that. They have the skills to do that. but just finding the balance between giving some of these strikers down the order, Nabi, Rashid Khan in particular, they're good strikers of the ball in their right situations. So if they can have a good tempo through their innings, I think you'll see other names come to the fore.
All right. Finally, key phases that you sense might decide this. Just looking at potential matchups and key players that you think will stand up in the semi-final.
Well, Faruqi has been a standout. What he's done is open up batting orders for then the spinners to come in. If teams can get away and be against Rashid Khan and their spinners and the like, it's a much different proposition. But Faruqi in particular have really created some packing wickets at the top, so that's a good to start with against a cock in particular, the swinging ball and trying to break open that South African top order, and then the spinners can go to work through the middle, and so that will be one challenge, and also the mouthwatering one again is Klassen. How Klassen plays the spinners through the middle could dictate the game. If there's a day out, and I've seen him have a day out against Rashid Khan, then the game will be over. There's no doubt about that. But it's been a little bit of form, slacking a little bit of run, so he has to show the courage and the skill that has made him one of the most dominant players over the last 2 years.
Favourites, Stephen Fleming, South Africa, Afghanistan?
Well, it's actually a great question. It's South Africa on paper, they are a well-balanced side. They have their bowling unit working really well, and they have potentially an outstanding batting lineup against a team that has played incredibly well with a big challenge of getting up for another game. The big if and but and what's going to happen is conditions, and that's been the interesting factor with so many unique conditions and different grounds, from weather to wind to slow to fast to variations, and the team that deals with that will take the absolute favourites tag, but on paper you still have to say South Africa.
Introducing the Epic New Swift. Time to go swifting.
वॉचो ऐप पे देखो एक OTT के दाम पे सारे OTT शान से।
Watch